Welcome back to the Bootu Boys. It's me, Van Lee. I'm curmudgeonly. I'm here to talk maladies and issues and bacteria and armed gunmen, all sorts of crazy shit on this edition of the Bootu Boys. But I'm not alone. I am joined by my own doctor friends, as we've established recently. Brian Vaughn, for one. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I've spotted a bit of swelling in the pants region. I don't know what the medical term for that is.
Erection.
Big pee-pee.
All right. Well, medically, it's an erection that I have because I'm so excited to talk about House again.
Now, that man who shouted erection into the microphone is also Spencer Hendricks. Welcome to the show, Spencer.
I'm glad we're doing this voluntarily because I have a gun and I will force it on you guys if we don't do it.
But to be fair, you always have a gun at these recordings.
I bring it every time, just in case.
You are Mr. Second Amendment.
That's
we
right.
know that.
Yeah, you're always saying, don't tread on me.
That's how we do it here in the Midwest, guys.
That's right. Well, welcome back to the show. We'll, of course, be discussing a second edition of House M.D., depending on where you're reading it. We just discussed off air. Occasionally on the show, they would just say House. Occasionally, it would be House M.D. It just depended on their mood.
Not a model of consistency.
No, but that's what we're going to be discussing. And this episode, as is tradition, is just simply bonkers compared to our first one. Our first one was a little more rooted in reality, I suppose.
And a little more on topic for the show.
Whereas this one is, I mean, it does the house things, but it also involves a man holding an entire hospital hostage with a gun because he wants to be treated.
Yeah.
Have you guys done this? Have you ever gone to the hospital?
I've wanted to because the only times I ever go to the hospital is because my brain's fucked up and I have anxiety issues and they don't know how to treat that shit. I would love to go in there with a gun and be like, hey, you know what? Get this right.
Fix my brain.
make it work. No, I've wanted to, but I haven't.
I mean, we are in the Midwest, so if you went to the doctor in the Midwest and you're like, oh, I have anxiety, I have all these problems, they would go, anxiety ain't a thing, you should go out to the spitting bucket and you'll be good.
And at the same time, they'd be totally fine with me having a gun. Like, I don't get your anxiety, but that's fine. You want me to hold your gun for you?
I find your firearm rather relatable, even if I cannot understand the mental turmoil you are currently undergoing.
Ain't you shot yourself yet?
You clearly need some medication to fix your brain, but that's all. You're just farming for medication here, ain't you? Of course I am. I have a problem. I need medication for it.
You know what? I'm beginning to suspect there's a problem with the state of healthcare in the country we live in.
Do you think part of the problem stems from the fact that neither of the three of us have ever really had health insurance?
Very
so we don't go to real doctors?
No. I don't. Like, the idea of going to a doctor seems like a very first world thing to me.
Yeah, that's hard to do.
I had a face thing recently, and I went to the...
You still have a face.
Well, I switched it. It was a John Travolta.
You do look like a different person now. I was going to say something, but I didn't think it was polite.
Well, I had to have I think it was an MRI. And the whole time I'm thinking, oh my God, when I get this bill, because I don't have insurance.
Yeah.
I still haven't gotten the bill. It's been like 2 months later. I don't know what the hell they do.
Let's just hope you never
free.
do.
Just, don't worry about it.
It's
on the house.
I think it's going to be several $1,000s.
It probably will be.
Yeah. Those things are just astronomical.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I digress. We're going to talk about...
What are we talking about? House M.D., the television show?
That's right. We're going to watch...
Well, he would be very sympathetic to patients without insurance.
He does the clinic thing, and he's still mean to them.
He hates it. Yeah,
he's just mean to
anyway,
everyone.
You're right. Go ahead. Let's start this.
Well, we're going to discuss the House episode Last Resort from Season 5. And again, it has an armed gunman, so if you're looking at the screen and there's a man with a gun, probably the right episode.
You might think you clicked on Homeland or something, but no, it's House. Even though alphabetically they'd be very similar in positioning.
Now, House had a bit of a renaissance after Season 3. They switched things up pretty drastically. The original crew of Doctors Chase, Foreman, and Cameron, they're kind of here, and we'll see them throughout this episode, but they're no longer on House's team, and they don't have the same kind of roles in the show. They're not there as much. What they did is they had, for various reasons, that crew leave House. They didn't want to be there anymore. I know Foreman felt like he was turning into House, so he didn't want to do that anymore. I don't remember what Chase and Cameron's deals were, but they left.
So Foreman didn't want to be a complete and total asshole?
Correct. He is. I actually do not like Foreman throughout the run of the series.
He's not in these episodes enough for me to get a good read.
He's too by the book, and it drives me nuts.
Too straight-laced?
Whereas House is too loose and crazy. He's too very much, this is what we should do. I'm the tough guy. He also has that, I'm I'm the boss now. They made this whole backstory with Foreman where he came from a gang and all kinds of stupid
Of
crap.
course. I wonder what made them decide to do that
Yeah.
with Omar Epps' character,
Huh.
Eric Foreman.
So the character then now that he has respect, it's that's all he cares about is the respect, the authority.
Maintaining that respect. Well, he also, there's a big Omar Epps hairstyle change.
Big one, yeah.
Between season 1 and this episode, which takes place in season 5. He has a lot less of it.
Yeah. And
closer cropped.
It
Looks
stays
good.
more like this the whole series than it did in season
I think that's what he
1.
looks like now, too.
Yeah.
I think that's just kind of what he does.
Absolutely. At the beginning of season 4, essentially what they did is they had a whole crew of 30 students come in, and House one by one went through them, eliminated people, and it was down to just a handful that he hired as his new team. Those people include Olivia Wilde as 13.
From Stranger Things.
She from Stranger. Wait, is she?
No, there's a girl.
No, they call her 11.
Yeah.
And that's a funny concept, though. I'm assuming he calls her 13 because that was a resident number or something.
That was her number in the group of students. He was like, I don't even care what your name is. You're number 13, and it stuck. And I to this day don't know her name.
I
didn't
pick it up in the episode.
I think it's 13 Jones.
So I'll be calling her 13 throughout the
That's
rest of the
fine.
way.
I did have a hunch that it was Olivia Wilde. I wasn't 100% sure because I don't really know that much about her. But I was like, I think based on her face shape, that's Olivia Wilde.
Very pointy face. Also, if a stiff breeze came, she might just go away.
She's very thin.
A casting question. Is any episode that Omar Epps appears in an episode, technically?
I guess they all would.
How do
be,
the
wouldn't they?
episodes compare to the alphasodes?
They're longer.
Well, you mentioned Stranger Things. The reason that kind of shocked me for a moment is because Olivia Wilde apparently was in the OC, and that's where somebody saw her and liked her, so she auditioned for this role.
We will cover that show at some point.
Will we? I don't know anything about it.
I, with an ex-girlfriend, watched the first probably 2 seasons of that show, maybe, when it was airing.
It's weird that you've seen it, considering I am the OC. I'm from that way.
The original Chili Pepper.
Moving along the list, Peter Jacobson is added to the cast as Dr. Chris Taub. He's the little bitty guy that we see a little bit later on.
Yeah.
He's my favorite thing about him in the episode I almost did for this one instead of this one is there's an episode where he actually was a perfect med student. He's Jewish, so of course he was. Because that's that.
Just kind of like how Omar Epps used to be in that gang.
That's
exactly.
what they do.
That's what they do. So he was the perfect student. He got into plastic surgery, which this show presented as a wild, sexy lifestyle. Plastic surgeons are living it up. They're just doing surgeries for whatever. Yeah, that's exactly what led into it. He decided that wasn't enough for him. He made all the money he needed. He had trouble with his wife. He had just a sad life. He wasn't living up to his expectations. So he joined House's team to make a difference. That's why he's here.
Because if you're feeling down, being around House more, that's going to help.
That's going to help, yeah.
I also like that was his decision is to just become like maybe a lesser paid doctor, a less glamorous doctor.
Paid, yes.
Yeah, but still, he's still a doctor. So it's like he demoted himself to like, I'm going to do a different kind of medical practice, a more honest one.
I'm going to still be wealthy.
I'm not going to hack up anyone's face anymore.
There's a period of time around this episode. It's one of my favorite storylines in the show. House goes bonkers or crazy or something and goes to a psychiatric hospital for a while.
We've all been there.
When he gets back, they've closed his department. Taub has left. A lot of people have left, of course. Taub goes back to plastic surgery, and the episode is wild. There's like sexy women everywhere, and he's like, "Baby, I'm gonna give you a boob job, and we're gonna do great together."
Is this real?
Yes. And then he's not.
He's like doing a line of coke off of a mirror, and he's like, "It's time for that rhinoplasty, Beth."
Pretty much. So he realizes he's unfulfilled, and he comes back later. So there's that. And then we also get Cal Penn as Dr. Lawrence Kuttner. I don't remember his backstory. I don't think it was too interesting, but it's noteworthy.
Why is everyone's name Cut something? Dr. Kuttner.
Cuddy.
Well,
I know it's spelled with 2 D's.
Maybe it's a
still,
medical pun with all the surgery that goes on.
A lot of their names are puns based on medical stuff. A house was something. I don't remember what it was.
Well, that's where they keep everything.
In the house. That's right. That's exactly what it was. Well, it's interesting because Cal Penn's storyline in this show was quite well known, and it was shocking at the time. Do either of you know anything what happens to him?
Yeah, he couldn't find the White Castle.
Not quite. Spencer, anything?
No, I don't have any idea what you guys are talking about.
in real life, what happened is Kal Penn was hired onto the Obama administration as a like a speechwriter or some very important position within the cabinet. So they had to remove him from the show. So how did they do this? It was abrupt. It was out of nowhere. The writers had no idea in advance they were doing this. Had him commit suicide.
What?
And the way they do it is in the opening episode, Kal Penn couldn't be there. He was already out of the show. So they show like shoulders down. It's like him lying in bed. I don't know if he hanged himself or injected or shot. He may have just shot himself. You just see the hand fall limp to the side.
Oh, no.
And then it's the cast dealing with his suicide. It was a huge moment. This hadn't happened in television.
They really needed to do that.
It's a drastic measure.
Yeah, they could have made it a little less dramatic.
That would have sucked. I think it would have been boring. I think they did a fantastic job.
Oh, they did.
Honestly,
okay.
if you go back and watch it, I loved it. I thought it was great. They talked about suicide, which, again, shows didn't do. None of those things happened back then. This is 2008 or whatever. They weren't allowed to talk about that. So it was a taboo subject. And they did it I would say the right way from what I remember. Now, that was a while back when I watched it, but they wrote him off the show that way, so he just killed himself.
Well, I mean, they found a way where fans don't have to guess if he's coming back.
And the other thing, too, is everyone on the show is like, how would he do this? He never displayed. No one does.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, people who commit suicide just do it.
Yeah.
And so that was very realistic in that regard.
I think they should have just had him for one more episode where he just kind of said goodbye to everyone and hugged them. That's what they should have done.
It would have been heartwarming. I'll give you
For a
that.
lot of shows, it definitely would have been preceded by a lot of, like, one episode out of nowhere where Kal Penn's character's like, I've been awfully sad lately.
Or what they would have done is had him show up to this prison and be like, look, man, I know you did a crime, but I need you to record this video for me because we can stop kids from doing this more. And then he argues out of the contract.
No, man, I look at stars.
So why not just go ahead and put Obama in one of these episodes too?
They
we could
should
just
have.
like
That
right
would've been
alongside
best.
each other.
Obama's being mean to House. I would have liked that. And House is like sad from it.
Maybe we could have just broken the fourth wall here and be like, I can't do this anymore because I'm gonna have to work for Obama now.
I don't agree with Dr. House.
So that was interesting. It was an interesting way to do that. But anyway, he's still in this episode, as we'll see a little bit
How
later.
do you guys think Obama's pancreas is? Do you think it's well endowed?
I bet so.
It's above average.
I bet it's shiny.
Very shiny, polished. I don't know. Does smoking affect your pancreas?
I don't know.
I mean, it affects a lot of things, so I'm not sure.
Pretty much all
Has
of it.
Obama ever smoked?
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen him with a cigarette.
That was his
know
big
that.
How
controversy.
dare
He
you
was a
tarnish
smoker.
his name?
No, he was a smoker.
Hell yeah. So
He had to give
Obama's
it up.
cool too.
He made a point to never
I
be
always
seen
liked
doing
him,
it.
but now I really like him.
Taking it up a notch.
He made a point to never actually be seen smoking because that would have, in their mind, made
That'd be
people
great.
not vote
Like,
for him. I don't
like-
know.
Well, I noticed.
State of the Union. He's in what?
Cigarette hanging out of his mouth.
Well, I noticed before the State of the Union, he didn't have any cigarettes, but he had to take off that leather jacket.
Well, he did ride his motorcycle there. He borrowed it from Biden,
Oh yeah, this is great.
Those are the key new cast members, and that's the crux of it. Now, we do, again, still see...
We've got
Dr.
Kal Penn, Barack Obama.
It's perfect.
Of course.
We still see Dr. Cameron, Chase, and Foreman periodically. Foreman is working somewhere else at a clinic, so he just randomly shows up in his big suit, and he's like, hey, you want to come work for me? And everyone's like, no, we still like working for House for whatever reason. Anyway,
We love to hate him.
that's basically the changes for this episode. So let's get right into the synopsis and
Okay.
talk about what happens here. The episode opens with some downer of a song. It plays as we see a waiting room full of patients waiting to be seen, all in slow motion. We get glimpses of characters who we'll see throughout the show, including Evan Peters, he's there, a stoner couple, some goofy-looking round trucker guy, and most importantly, a very sickly-looking businessman who's hunched over his bag and waiting in a chair. The trucker guy sees 13, again, Olivia Wilde, and demands to be seen because he's been waiting for over an hour. 13 tells him the coolest shit because being mean to her won't get him seen any quicker. And he says, look, I need my pain meds or whatever it is. Something offhand like that.
But he's not an emergency. She's
Not
quick to tell him
emergency,
that. You're
no.
not an emergency. Fuck off.
She's got to do her job, got to prioritize in the ER.
Dr. Foreman, who by this point has left House's team because he feared he was becoming too much like House,
Also, his lucrative grill making business.
and all of his children named George. He approaches 13 with news that he's got a bead on some clinical trial for Huntington's disease sufferers, which, by the way, a few episodes prior to this, 13 was diagnosed with it, or maybe she's always known. But the idea behind this concept, which keeps coming up, is that she ignores her thing. She doesn't look ahead. She's like, I don't want to think about it. It's what it is. So she doesn't seek treatment. She doesn't try to fix it. And Huntington's is very bad. You have a very short
Yeah.
lifespan.
And you don't
It's
find out
horrible.
about it until you're older.
Yeah.
It
I
was
remember
mentioned
reading
in the
about that.
episode that she would have essentially it's
8 to 10.
uncurable and 8 to 10 years to live. Would you guys do even if you were told you
I
had
would do
8
what
to
she
10
did.
years
Yeah, just ignore it and be like,
to
whatever.
live?
For at least 5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then kind of
It'd be
figure it
real
out.
difficult for me to want to even continue from there.
Yeah, that's
Like,
true.
in a certain light, just because it'd be like, well, I know what the cap is here.
Well, she's been quite coy about discussing it, so she refuses to join this panel, storms off angrily that Foreman would even bother this help. This has happened a couple times. People are like, hey, have you looked into? She goes, no, blah, 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 and storms off. I have to get back to
He
Jason
should have been like,
Sudeikis.
bitch, I was in a game. I'll cut you if you don't get in this.
I have to get back to Jason Sudeikis.
Well, that was her husband for a long time.
Oh, okay.
They were
He's
married.
not in the show.
No, sadly. I
That's
wish
too
he
bad.
were.
Yeah.
that's too
How
bad.
do you guys feel about Jason Sudeikis?
I
He's fine.
like him more than I used to.
Agreed.
He's been in some bad things, too.
Oh, yeah, very
Yeah.
much so. I still don't buy that he's Dreamboat.
Well, he's not, yeah.
They
No, he
always
looks
do
like
that
just
in
a
movies.
dude. Yeah.
What was it? It was actually a really bad movie with Charlie Day, Michael from Arrested Development, and Jason Sudeikis. Horrible Bosses.
Yeah.
Oh, I
which-
never saw that.
It
yeah.
really wasn't
It
that
wasn't
good.
very good, and I don't know why, but I thought the premise was good.
Yeah,
So I
Yeah,
thought
it
it might be
sounds like
funny.
it could be funny.
it just wasn't that
Yeah.
good. There were parts. Jennifer Aniston was funny in it, I think, being
Yeah.
creepy.
I'm not a Charlie Day person either.
Hit and
myself.
miss. But you just said that. There's a million people out there like, but you don't watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the funniest show that's ever existed. It's fine. It's
Yeah.
funny. It's fine.
It's,
but
it's
might
just
have
kind of
laughed
is
once.
there.
in that movie, he's a heartthrob. Women throwing themselves over him. He's funny, but I don't know, he just doesn't fit that mold. And that's stuck with me. So I still have that, like, why is this guy a heartthrob thing? Anyway, I do like him more, though, than I used to.
Yeah, I do too. I don't even know why he's endeared himself to me further, though.
Next up, we have our sickly looking businessman seeing the sign on Dr. Cuddy's office, including her title, Dean of Medicine, and he gets an idea. He opens the door to find House rooting around in Cuddy's desk. He asks if she's there, and House is snarky and mean to him, so usual House stuff. Guy apologizes and, like, very solemnly, he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to bother you.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to cause
Yeah,
just
actually,
a whole
I
lot of
felt
pain
bad.
and suffering.
I felt bad for him in that scene. It was like, House, you piece of
She's
shit.
just being mean to him. So he leaves the office, closes the door behind him. We then see him walk back into the waiting room and pull a gun out of his pocket. Presumably, they just don't have metal detectors at Princeton, Plainsboro.
Yeah,
or
I
whatever.
couldn't understand that either. How do you get that thing in there?
Next, we cut back to House inside Cuddy's office, still at the desk, and the sickly guy ends up bringing in a dozen other people, all at gunpoint. In addition to the people I mentioned at the top of the show, we also have Dr. 13, a nurse, some cute girl, and of course, still Evan Peters. He's there. House starts to say something mean, and our gunman says, shut up! I'm sick and I need your best doctor here now. Otherwise, I'm going to start killing people. And with the longest, most unnecessary pause ever, camera pushes all the way up into Hugh Laurie's mouth, and he says, what seems to be the problem?
Yeah, also, I like the concept that any given hospital would have a best doctor. Just that vague, like, oh yeah, we know who the just in general best doctor is. Also, House just diagnosed, that's his thing. He's a diagnostic doctor, right? And
Yes.
I don't know, I mean, he is ideal for this situation, but I don't think
Except
that qualifies you to be the
Takes him
best
like,
doctor.
at least the entire episode to get it right. So the first diagnosis is never correct with House.
No,
So
because
yeah.
people lie. They're like, I've never been to a tropical
And
climate or
it
whatever.
also fits House's worldview of everyone else sucks, but I'm awesome. Oh, it's not my fault I was wrong. You lied.
Now, what the House group does is essentially they just work in this hospital and they take certain cases that other doctors can't figure out. So a patient will come in showing signs that whatever doctor can't figure it out. So they
I see.
submit the case to House's team. They filter through and go, oh, this one sounds
They're a bit
interesting.
of a special unit.
They're specialists. Yes, exactly. So they don't take very many cases. So in fact, this guy might have been on House's desk.
he must have, yeah.
But House, they didn't have the time or just didn't find it interesting, so they didn't do it. And actually, there was an episode I watched later where House, the hospital, someone steals the baby in the hospital.
Oh.
So the
Happens.
hospital shuts down, and House is in some random guy's room trying to watch TV. The guy wakes up, and the House is like, wait a minute, what are you doing awake? You're pumped so full of drugs, you shouldn't be awake. Those two start to bond and discuss what they do. And the guy's like, people haven't been able to figure out my thing for years. I know you. You're Dr. House. I submitted my case to you. And that's what he's like, I take maybe 10 cases a year. I'm sorry we didn't take your case, but it
I
happens.
think he takes like 22, 23 cases a year.
Yeah, give
also,
or
at
take
the end
one or
of that,
two.
does House adopt the baby that
Yeah.
got stolen?
He does. The baby, by the way, is found in like a clothes hamper. A nurse had low blood sugar or something and just stole it and didn't realize she did it. Yeah, it was a whole
And then
thing.
that baby later grows up to be House's Kane.
After returning from the intro scene, the armed man reveals he's doing all of this because he has something horribly wrong with him, but of course can't figure out what it is. He has been to 16 doctors.
That's a lot.
He's had blood tests, even a homeopathic consult, which
my
I
God.
assume was worthless, as they
Ooh.
traditionally are.
Well, they probably had him grind up some sage or something.
Stick a candle in some hole.
Yeah.
That's what they do. He's tired, he can't breathe, he gets rashes and heart palpitations and insomnia. Everyone is really on edge in this scene. Obviously, a man is holding them at gunpoint, except for House, who's still just kind of mean to the guy, but it's, I guess, rightfully so for once. He should be mean to this guy.
Right, he's not afraid at all.
I don't know if you should antagonize the guy with the gun, though. There might be a time where you should talk him down, but he doesn't have that skill. He's not a negotiator.
No, he's not.
He's not a diplomat.
That's what Dr. Wilson would do.
Well, they have that phrase that's like the only thing that can stop a bad man with a gun is an angry man with a cane.
And a limp, yes. And just an attitude. Too much sass.
A cane that's also a gun.
He pulls the end of it.
Didn't the penguin have an umbrella gun?
Yes, he totally
Yeah.
did.
So House could have
It's
one.
been done, so I don't know why he didn't think of
Hey,
that.
he could use that umbrella for a lot of stuff, honestly. House should look into that for his cane.
Perfect. House begins to examine the guy who gets upset. House didn't look at his files because he brought all his files with him. The guy knew he was doing
He was
this.
prepared.
House says, look, you already gave me your symptoms, and clearly none of these tests figured it out, so I don't need to look at your files. He begins to dissect the guy and what could bring him to do this whole thing. As usual, he does play psychologist with him and determines the only way someone could do something like this is if they were a nerd. In one case, he's like, Mommy took your video games. He's just kind of a dick to the guy.
He gives him like the stereotypical like, mom's basement, you're a snowflake.
Or maybe his wife left him. House says he's clearly blaming everyone else for what's wrong with him, but the guy just says, hey, I've never been married. It's nothing like that. I just want to know what's wrong with me. This has been hell, that's all. House doesn't believe it, though. Eventually, House bums a lighter off of Evan Peters, and the gunman tests his lung capacity by holding it at arm's length and trying to blow it out. He can't do it. He has diminished lung capacity.
I do like the touch of House having them do the test without knowing why.
Yeah.
They'll perform more honestly that way since he's concerned about all the lying.
So House says that all of those other doctors got every symptom right, but the very last one, which points to something called pulmonary scleroderma. All it will take is a simple alkylating agent, and the guy will be good to go. Just
Ooh,
then,
problem solved.
there we go. Episode over. Just then the phone rings, and the armed man gives it to House to answer, to which he picks it up and says, crime scene.
Yeah, pretty hilarious.
House.
He's not perturbed at all about this entire development. He's fine.
No, at this point, somewhere around in here also, House knows he's rolling up his sleeves and
Right.
he's helping
A
out.
lot like when he had to teach the class. It's like it's the same thing to him. It's like I wouldn't pick this, but now I get to be important.
Yeah, I'm going to dig my heels in, though, now that I'm here.
He's doing
And
Yalman's
including
work. Yeah.
taking off my formal wear to reveal
Whatever
My
it
Ed Hardy
takes.
t-shirt.
Yeah, my Ed Hardy flaming red skull t-shirt that I'm wearing as a 50-year-old man.
Whatever it takes to reveal his genius, he's all in on.
Now on the phone, it's Cuddy, and she wants to know what's up. House asks for propofol, and he'll be able to prove that's it to the gunman, and then they can all go home. It's decided that Cuddy will be the one to deliver the drugs, not a police officer.
Yeah, the dean of medicine, who you
how
normally
it
would
goes.
have just kind of doing this sort of role.
Your sexy dean of medicine, not an 80-year-old man like it almost always is. But House cannot resist to get a dig in there.
She's not a cop. Dr. Cuddy brings in the drugs. Alone.
She might be armed. I'd have her deliver it shirtless.
Again, it's like the Carmen Electra stuff all over again.
So, yeah, once again, this is House ogling a woman. And he does this a lot. He and Cuddy actually had a quasi-relationship.
I was going to ask about
In
that.
seemed
college,
like they
they
did.
slept together. And she's like, it was a one-time thing. It didn't mean anything. They've had a back-and-forth thing.
And
anyway.
they're supposed to have attended college at the same time.
That's right. Yes, at
Okay.
Michigan State University, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Go Wolverines, right?
Spartans.
Well, whatever.
I-
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah. See, the Wolverines would they have their own
Michigan.
college. Just the Wolverines, the animal.
Oh.
They have their own one.
That's
it's
good.
taught
And
by
they're all
Wolverine.
doctors.
I was just going to make that joke.
Adamantium 101 is the first class you have to take. Yeah.
Man, is that where the Weapon X program is located, or
No,
do they
that's
outsource?
in Gambit 305. That's a whole
Oh.
other class with a bunch of gumbo and jambalaya.
It's Gambit 305, Mon Chéri.
Yeah.
Wow. So I hope you guys are done with that because I did not enjoy it a bit.
No, I want to talk a little more about the X-Men. Professor X in the cartoon doesn't even have a wheelchair. He's a hover chair, and it's awesome, and it's yellow.
Well, Magneto in the comics actually becomes president.
Does he?
I don't think so. I think I made that up.
He does become president of Asteroid M, which is where he has his home base in space. But because he can control magnets, he puts oxygen up there. You know how it works. All right.
I can just feel the download numbers going up.
Okay, a short while later, we do hear a knock at the door, and Cuddy's in there with the drugs. House and Cuddy have a very brief exchange before the gunman says, "Get in here or I'll kill this hostage." House does seem to imply he does have it under control and take it easy. Back in the room, House preps the propofol, and the gunman tells him to inject someone else with it first. He's worried they're going to try and poison him.
That's fair.
House objects because, look, you captured people out of a hospital waiting room. They're all sick. You can't give sick people the wrong drug. It'll make them worse.
Also fair.
Now, Gunman, I'm going to start calling him Gunman throughout the rest of the show because he's not named, by the way. He says to make the fat guy take the dose because the guy earlier said he didn't have his pain meds, so it's not going to mix with anything, so he wants the fat guy to take it. The fat guy then replies, "Hey, man, you got a thing with doctors? Why don't you take it out on them?"
Yeah, he's a total coward about it. He's like, "I'm not taking it."
Yeah,
he points to 13.
"Give it to 13. She only has 8 to 10 years to live.
Let's give it to a woman.
She has fewer years to live than her name is."
That's good. Eventually, House does inject the fat guy and everything is fine. So he goes to inject Gunman, but a slight delay to roll up his sleeve, and the fat guy just passes out behind House before he could inject Gunman. You see, propofol is actually a fast-working anesthetic. This is all House's plan all along. He wanted to do this so he could get the guy to pass out. Obviously, the wrench was thrown in the plan with the guy saying, shoot the fat guy with it.
Yeah, I like how earnest House is here. Like, thought I had a little more time.
Yeah, he says, I thought I would have had more time with a guy that size.
It was kind of one of the very few House things where Hugh Laurie plays it off in a way where it's not beating you over the head with the snark.
Yeah,
so
it's a little subtle.
It was nice.
Gunman then is furious and decides the only way he can get people to take him seriously and not try this shit is to shoot someone. So he then shoots some guy who was being a bitch earlier in the episode. He shoots him in the leg, so we're not supposed to be too upset about it.
No,
He's an
it's
asshole.
It's
this
fine to
guy
get shot in the
already,
leg.
no one has, I really wish House even was showing a change in emotion over the fact that they realized that the gunman, which the phrase gunman already says, not terribly stable, doesn't necessarily care about other people, but he shot another person and is just totally fine with anyone else being injected with whatever, no matter how sick they are. This is a desperate, wild man, gunman.
Absolutely. And he looks sickly throughout this whole episode. I thought they
very
made him
pale.
look good
Yeah, he's very pale.
as far as the role. Now, the phone rings and they all stand around just ignoring it. Gunman picks up the receiver and hangs it up immediately, implying he's done this a few times. But the phone begins ringing again, and the guy looks at House and just goes, like he wouldn't expect people to be going to get in touch with him.
No one calls hospitals.
On the phone this whole time was Dr. Cuddy, who we find being joined by some police or SWAT team, whatever it is, coming in. So next we see House's new crew, which is Doctors Taub, Chase, Cameron, and Kuttner. Also Foreman's there. They all receive beeper notifications to give House a call. They make their way to his office and call his cell phone, and the group all start talking through the guy's symptoms. Dr. Chase, however, is disgusted that this is working for this guy, so he just leaves and says he wants no part of it.
We send in a couple of kangaroos in there with some Fosters, and he'll fix it up in a jiffy.
So Chase just doesn't want to do it. He leaves. The crew narrows it down to 4 choices at this point: lung infection, cancer, nerve paralysis, or a heart defect. House writes this all on Cuddy's wall and orders some tests to check the guy's apartment and to comb through his medical records.
House does not like Cuddy's office. He's always disrespecting it.
He just likes to toy with Cuddy,
Yeah.
which he does frequently throughout the run of
Very
the series.
antagonistic in a playful way. In the way that, like, a boy on the playground would be like, ew, cooties from a girl, and then, like, push her.
Yep, because he likes her too much.
Yeah.
Now, the team sets out to do their thing, and the gunman willingly gives them his address, to which House says, you're giving me that, so you don't plan on coming back. I guess you do have an in game. Now, the officer in charge of the SWAT team calls and talks to House, who says, here's what's up. We're going to need someone to do a blood run, but just then Gunman hears SWAT people coming outside of the room and demands the currently approaching SWAT guys to get out of here or he'll shoot someone. After all the hubbub, House asks if anyone else has heard the SWAT guys. No one did. They didn't hear anything. So he's discovered yet another symptom that the guy's displaying.
Incredibly sensitive hearing.
It's called hyperacusis, which is a hearing issue, making certain things too loud, others too soft. It's just overall fucked up hearing.
It would make you kind of also the ultimate busybody, depending on the situation. There are a lot of old women that my mom knows who I think would love to
Yeah,
have
like the
hyperacusis.
equivalent of having the glass against the door sort of thing.
This is maybe this guy's X-Men power, if he can control it, because then he can determine
He needs to
when
hone
to
in
get
on it, and then he's got he can be the prime neighborhood gossip.
Thought we were done with X-Men talk. We're not.
No, never. We're going to keep going. House then also asks Gunman to do a few local tests, including smiling like a maniac, which he does. This helps him favor one of our 4 potential things wrong with him. House thinks it's some form of herpes, apparently.
Yeah.
Now, the test for herpes is evidently to inject capsaicin directly into someone. And if it hurts like hell, that means it's the wrong diagnosis. If it doesn't hurt, you might have herpes.
I can see how House was led to the conclusion that this gunman might have herpes, as he is just devastatingly handsome. He's like
so only hot people have herpes.
A frail. Well, you know that he's having so much anonymous sex, being a frail off the cuff man.
He could be paying for it or something, though. You know, it's possible.
That's actually true, and then it would be more likely, potentially. I don't know. I don't know who he's clientele for.
Now, capsaicin, by the way, is of course what's in peppers. That's heat in peppers.
Oh.
Do you guys know that?
No.
I didn't.
Yeah, the direct.
I'm glad I do, though.
A habanero would have more capsaicin than a jalapeno, for example. So
that is what that ingredient is. That is fascinating.
Yep.
The more you know.
Now, they order a couple of doses of the stuff, and Gunman agrees to give up 2 hostages in return for the stuff they need. But Dr. Cuddy has to be the one to deliver the stuff still.
Again.
Doesn't want a police officer in here. Now, the fat guy full of propofol and the jerk who got shot are let out and freed, while the room full of hostages plays the touch your nose, not it game as to who has to take the first dose of capsaicin.
And that is not Van making a joke. That is literally what they do.
It's absolutely real.
I always lose those games when we do those in the social settings. I forget that everyone's doing it. Yeah,
little man and stuff like that.
I forget that every time.
The hippie dude loses this and refuses to do it. So 13 actually volunteers to be the guinea pig to test it out for Gunman. Yeah, at this point. 13 and House have a conversation here where we find out he thinks she's doing what she's doing and not afraid because she's ignoring her disorder, lying to herself, and basically putting it out of her hands. If Gunman kills her, she doesn't have to make a decision.
It's true.
This does it for her. He says you're copping out as you do this. She starts wincing in pain because obviously she doesn't, well, maybe not obviously, but because she doesn't have the herpes here. So Gunman takes the next dose and again starts wincing in pain. So House hobbles over to the wall where he's written the potential maladies and crosses nerve paralysis off of the list.
We're getting down to the nitty gritty as far as what this could even be.
Meanwhile, Kuttner and Taub have found their way to the guy's apartment, and they discovered that the guy knew he wasn't coming back, so he left everything the doctors might need out for them. Kuttner discovers thousands of dollars of unpaid medical bills on the guy's table, and the 2 doctors talk about how shitty our healthcare system is here in the U.S.
Yep.
Kuttner basically says, look, if we've got a system that leaves people in crippling debt, somebody's going to do something drastic eventually. He's not surprised. He's not defending this guy's actions, but he's like, we created this monster with our system.
Yeah, unfortunately, too many people will still blame the sick.
Doctors Foreman and Cameron are also back at the lab, and Foreman reveals the various counts were normal, white blood cell count, whatever, so they can rule out infection. House crosses it off the list, and they begin discussing the new revelations with the crew. Kuttner mentions a family photo with a fat mom, and this leads everyone to start down a path when 13 sees something with a blood vessel in this guy's neck, in Gunman's neck, and they think, oh, this could be a vascular issue. It could be related to the heart.
Good find.
They check the guy out, and his heart rate is racing. It's through the roof. They need to do something to slow down his heart because he's saying, if I start to pass out, I'm just going to shoot somebody. We have to stop this. 13 suggests that they do it chemically because if they use the electric paddles that we always see in shows, that essentially sends electricity through all your muscles, causing them to tense.
He'll start shooting everywhere.
He's going to pull the trigger. That's going to make his finger go off. Make his finger go off.
His finger will fly off.
Just right across the room. So 13 says, hey, let's do it chemically. And she's given some time to get what she needs out of the main lobby where no one else is standing. Gunman says, you've got 30 seconds. Go out there if you're not back in time.
Which is not a lot of time. I felt a lot of pressure for 13 here.
I think at this point, Gunman is going to shoot Evan Peters.
And he's about to do it, too.
Yeah.
He's real convinced he needs to.
And I've seen Evan Peters die before on screen.
Several times.
So it wouldn't have been that big a deal if it had happened again.
You know what movies Evan Peters? I missed the fucking name Evan. I messed that up. Do you know what movies that guy was in? the new X-Men movies. He played
Oh,
Quicksilver.
no.
Oh.
Tying it all back
He
together.
was, my first experience with him, I think, was in the first season of American Horror
Same here.
Story.
Yeah. Or my mom was watching it, and she was like, there's this boy on the show with the name Evan. I'm like, oh, there's someone with a name out there. How about that?
I am sold.
While 13 is out there gathering the medication, she sees that she has a chance to escape, and the people in the room are discussing whether or not she actually returns or if she escapes. House, in fact, says she should leave. Why wouldn't you? It's save yourself above all others in this scenario.
However, according to House's own hypothesizing, she would never leave to spare her own life in the first place.
That's exactly what he says. And seconds before he's about to shoot Evan Peters, the female nurse steps in the way and says, "Do me instead." And the gunman's like, "Really? Okay." And as he starts to do it, female nurse goes, "No, I was just playing for time. Don't please don't shoot me. She'll be back any second."
Yeah, gunman is
Shoot
not
me,
phased.
No.
He'll do it. He'll blow away anybody in that room.
It
Maybe
turns
not
out
House.
he at least does. He crowdsources it. He's like, well, if you don't think that's the right person to shoot, I'll listen to other
See,
options.
I'm willing to murder any of you at any given time. I just
What do
need
you
to know
guys
who.
think? Let's go around the room here.
And at the last second, 13 bursts back in the room. She's gotten everything she needs. Everyone sighs a breath of relief.
I think this is a pretty good time to take a quick break, so let's do that. And then when we get back, we'll continue discussing Dr. Domicile and his sidekick, A Number.
Now, Gunman says, hey, 13 has to take this first. Because again,
Yep.
you could be trying to poison me. You could be something weird here. In fact, you did just try to do that to me. So
Yeah.
she has to take it
And in
first.
effect, he's causing this medical experiment to be performed on 13.
Mhm.
Yeah, poor 13, who has Huntington's.
House objects to this because shit's good for someone with a fast heart rate, not so
Yeah.
much with someone with a normal heart rate. That could slow it down so slow it could kill you. While arguing, 13 then stuffs a dose inside of her arm and immediately collapses from it. Gunman then takes a dose and his heart rate slows and they're back to normal. House does notice, however, that Gunman is sweating, much like me, but only from half of his face. This is because, Hal hypothesizes, Gunman has a tumor on his sympathetic nerves, therefore he has lung cancer. Fun fact.
This was also, by the way, hinted at earlier when he smiled, but only part of his face
Correct. That was
went up.
part of the paralysis thing when they
Yeah.
discussed that as well. And fun fact about this moment, I was writing this down and was like, sympathetic nerves, is that House being a douche or is that the real term? And Brian's like, I think it, and we had to look it up. And anyway, it is a real term, but I thought it could just be House playing with him. I don't know.
Just making up jargon.
Exactly.
Despite you being a doctor, but I mean, we can't remember everything all the time.
No,
No,
different
we're not all
specialties.
house level experts.
My
Come
brain
on.
only has enough room for information, and I'm mostly thinking about how many milliliters a snake outputs when they bite something.
Right, or something about ALF medicine, which I still don't understand what
Well,
is.
see, Melmacians have 3 separate kidneys. They don't have the 2 like.
Oh.
I don't know that.
No one
No,
knows.
yeah, no one could.
Well.
Paul Fusco does. Meanwhile, 13's pulse is continually slowing, so House tells the nurse to get her up and help her walk around and hopefully get the heart rate up. Gunman says he needs proof of the cancer, so House calls Dr. Wilson and presents the symptoms. Wilson says to try something, so House asks Gunman to spit on the floor.
And he can't?
The result tells House that this is in fact correct, so House reveals the information. Of course, Gunman needs more proof, so he asks how many hostages it would take during a trip to the CT machine. What follows next is an action montage where several of our hostages tie themselves to Gunman in a circle formation, ensuring that if the SWAT team takes a shot, they would hit a hostage. They group waddle their way to the elevator and then to the CT room, while House berates both 13 and Gunman while trying to figure out Gunman's motive the whole way. But he's steadfast. He just says, look, I want answers. I'm not doing this because of a wife or some other problem. I just need to know what's wrong with me.
I don't have herpes. I'm not married. I just want to know why I'm sick.
I am an X-Man.
I have killed before.
Gunman sets up to go into the MRI machine while holding the gun the whole time, and while running the machine, House continues to grill him about his motive, just not understanding how awful it can be to just not know something like this. I can kind of empathize a little bit with
Yeah,
Gunman.
I think you're supposed to a little. Not all
yeah,
the way.
Not all the way, yeah.
If I had not seen him fire a bullet into someone like within a few minutes into
He
the
only did
episode,
that
it'd be
because they
easier.
tried to drug him. Come on.
You lose a little bit of the sympathy vote at that point, but I get it. I understand where he's coming from. After the test, House pulls a thing where he writes something down without showing anyone, passes it off to the other hostages, He says, look, to get your answer, you need to give me the gun. House turns around the computer monitor and shows a messed up image and asks 13 what is wrong with it. She says it's called a starburst pattern because the metal in the gun is fucking up the imaging. They reveal what House wrote, and it just says Starburst. So he basically says...
And also, Olivia Wilde was eating a Starburst in this. It was actually an advertisement for
Taste
Starburst.
the rainbow. Wait, no.
That's fine. Good
Same
enough.
thing.
Those
Skittles,
are the tinier,
Starburst,
rounder
whatever.
Starburst.
Chewy, fruity goodness.
Yeah.
Do you guys like Starburst?
No.
or
I
Skittles?
do.
I don't.
I
mean,
do.
it's
I like
pointless, though. It's
Starburst
pointless.
more than Skittles.
They're both the same category. It's like, why would I actually eat it apart from that sugar rush? It's just not... You're not going to be like, man, I was hungry and then I had some Starburst.
No, they don't. Little known fact,
Satiate.
candy does not satiate hunger.
Snickers does.
I'm in between you guys because it's the chewing thing. I don't want to sit there and chew on the stupid fruit thing for 6 minutes.
I
because
like
it's
the
so hard.
chewing.
I don't like it.
I
so
kind of have to suck on it for a little while
Sure.
before I chew.
loosen it up a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That sounds a little wrong.
Yep. Well,
Why? What do you do to your Starburst, Spencer? Please explain.
I don't eat them. I was told when I worked at a library one time, and those are some educated people there at the libraries. they told me that they were made out of pig feet that were melted. So at
Delicious.
that point, I was like, I'm not going to eat Starburst. That's not actually why I don't. I just don't. I don't like stuff like that because again, it's not satiating in any way. Snickers is like that. What are they? What's the Snickers thing? What do they say?
if
what's
you're
the-
hungry,
Satisfied?
grab a Snickers.
Hungry?
I don't think
Grab a
that's what it
Snickers.
is.
I think that is what
That's
it is.
it. Hungry? Grab a Snickers.
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
That's really
What do you
funny.
think
that
it
is
is?
what it is.
Isn't it?
Break me off a piece of that Snickers bar.
Is it why weight or
Big
something?
on
can
chocolate,
save-
not on fat.
You can save, in 15 minutes, you can save 15%
On
on
Snickers.
Snickers.
That's not enough.
Yeah, it's hungry, grab a Snickers.
Have it your way.
Okay. So anyway, there's a lot of cut out whatever you need to there.
No, it's all
But
staying in.
if there's any sort of time when you're hungry and you need some kind of candy,
Clap your hands.
you need a Snickers, not some Starburst shit.
Okay. I actually agree with you because Snickers is filling. I think it's the
it's
peanuts.
got the nuts. yeah.
Also, yeah, I would way rather have a Snickers than a fucking
Well, sure.
thing of Starburst.
I guess it just depends on what your mood is, which I don't know what your mood would be if you wanted a Starburst, though. What is that?
Oh, delightful, feeling like I'm in 4th grade, those sorts of moods.
Okay, that's fair.
House at this point basically says to the guy, hey, give me your gun. I'll reveal what's wrong. We'll do the test again, but you can't have the gun. It's going to fuck everything up. We then see several hostages fleeing the room, and Cuddy asks, hey, what's up? One of them reveals that House got the gun away from him, so they just escaped. With the gun at the desk, House runs the MRI machine again, and much to his dismay, realizes that it is not, in fact, a lung tumor. Also, Evan Peters has wandered his way back because he's just curious as to what's wrong with this guy for some reason.
Yeah,
Then again, I get it.
I do get it too. He's like, I want to see this through, but also
No,
maybe it's Evan Peters that has the death wish.
The curiosity part, couldn't you just ask someone after you got away and made sure you lived? Because I would definitely not come back
Maybe
to the room.
shout in and be like, "Hey, House, shoot me a text after this shit's
Yeah.
over."
I don't really understand the concept behind, well, I had to risk my life to figure out what's going on here.
Well, here's the thing. In a couple hours, he has to go put on that full black leather suit and sleep with the guy from The Walking Dead's wife. Isn't that right? I watched
I'm not
American Horror
sure.
Story once many years ago.
No, it's a different actor.
That's fine though. I like that
Not
we're
Evan
mixing-
Peters. Connie Britton
Oh.
Right.
is the actor.
Is the actress.
Listen
I
to
like
this-
her.
Listen to this
Yeah.
off the cuff knowledge we have on the show. We just can we can just mishmash them together.
We
and
can
figure it out.
crowdsource information essentially about shows that were old. Maybe we'll do that show at some point.
That's why we're such experts in the first place.
There
That's
you
why
go.
you're listening.
Utterly defeated and without a gunman, who's just man at this point, basically gives up.
When you take away a gunman's gun,
Just man.
What does he become?
He says, hey, thanks for trying. Gig's up, puts his suspenders back on. He's gone through all this. He's got nothing to show for it. This is the end of the line.
I really do like how he's very careful to get formal. Like
Yeah.
he puts the suspenders on. He's like, well, I'm obviously getting arrested now, so might as well go out in style, which is suspenders.
I gave it a shot. But House being House, he then hands the gun right back to Gunman, making him not man,
Ugh.
but Gunman.
No, that's honestly the worst thing you could ever possibly imagine doing. Why would
This
he
was
do
as
that?
close to just yelling at the TV screen as I got, I think.
This is a House thing. He does this. And in fact, 13 immediately says something like, you're a coward. She screams that. The gunman's like, excuse me? And it turns out she's yelling at House.
I'm
And then
very brave.
House goes back at her with, you're a coward, which is like, what? What?
Yeah.
And then 13 comes back with, I know you are, but what am I?
And then House
But-
says, I'm rubber and you're glue.
And then 13 says, not.
I understand there's a lot of elements at play here, but for him to, she's already taken multiple shots at this point, and he gave the gunman back the gun, and he's telling her somehow she's a coward in the situation, even though he's definitely making the situation continue on.
Yeah, and
totally
making it
unfair.
worse for her.
Yeah, she's already been through enough, and he's like, you know what? Here's your gun back. Let's keep this going. Let's shoot her some more shit. Let's just keep it going. And also, she's the coward.
Yes, she says, you're a coward. And House says, I'm not a coward. I'm just arrogant. You're a coward. You're the one who is totally fine with all of this because you don't want to make a decision. You want someone else to kill you or do whatever it is to make the decision for you. You're avoiding your stuff, which he has a point, but also he just gave a gun back to Gunman.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's really making a decision here as far as impacting her likelihood of living.
And meanwhile, the phone has been ringing off the hook. House finally gets fed up, answers it, picks it up, and says, they overpowered me and got the gun back.
I would feel better also if I thought House made this decision because he felt for Gunman.
Sure.
He didn't.
No.
He made it
No,
because he
he-
wants to solve it.
He wasn't
He's a
done.
narcissist.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
hadn't figured it
Yeah.
out.
He does have to find the answer. That's House's
Which
thing.
means everyone's life has to be in jeopardy for his own ego.
Well, every house is not a home.
It's a crack house. Maybe if he stops taking the Vicodin and takes crack house.
He'll be fine.
Okay. In the show, I mentioned earlier, he goes crazy or whatever and goes to the psychiatric hospital. He meets a psychiatrist there who happens to be the police chief from Brooklyn Nine-Nine,
Oh, Andre Brower.
which is, I love that guy.
He's great.
I wish I didn't hate, what's his name, so much and could watch that show.
Andy Samberg.
I cannot handle it's about 40% too much Sandberg. If they dial it back a little bit, I would watch the hell of that show because every side character is great. I love every other actor,
Yeah.
but I can't stand him. He does that Zach Braff thing of never doing any wrong. Everyone loves him. There was one episode I watched in the first season because I only got so many episodes in where he fucks up, and so everybody has to lose their plans and work on the weekend. But in the end, he gets his guy, so everyone's like, it's okay, Jake, I think it was. I would be pissed. Jake would never, ever get it back in my eyes unless he really redeemed himself.
No, Jake would have to work hard to get your trust back.
I'm glad you brought up
On
Zach
the
Braff,
Force.
and I do want to get back into that toward the end of this when we
Some
circle
scrubs,
back.
okay.
Yes.
All right, let's get back to this, though.
Let's finish the episode here where he shoots everyone.
Back in House's office, he calls the 2 Live House crew and starts going through the symptoms again. Dr. Foreman said Dr. Chase was right. House is going to kill someone, and I'm not going to be a part of it. So Dr. Foreman storms off, exits the show forever, which is kind of interesting because they're starting to develop the relationship, or it's just after the relationship that Foreman and 13 had. So they care for
Oh.
one another a lot at this point, either part of that relationship it was on because it doesn't last. But he leaves. She's still in this thing, and he leaves. And that's why the final scene, which we'll get to later, they kind of hint at that. He's like, I'm sorry I left.
And they both have numbers in their name, 13 and 4-man.
They start spitballing ideas and talk about goats and all kinds of stuff. And while discussing this, House notices yet another symptom. The guy is turning his head to favor a particular ear. I don't know anyone who would do that. This one doesn't work. Left ear doesn't work. So I'm
Nope.
always doing
It
that.
sucks.
People get mad because if we're walking, I don't talk to people that much, but you get the idea.
When you're doing a walk and talk
Yeah.
in your lab coat.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I was, God damn it, you stole the white coats and hallways joke.
I always move to the left side. So
Every
people Be on
time.
my right. People
Well,
don't
is
like that.
Maybe that's your better side too. Maybe
Could
that's
be.
why that ear
it
went out.
glows better. No, so people will genuinely, some people just don't like, they have a preference for whatever reason. It's our instinct or whatever.
I want everyone on my left.
People won't like me being on their left. So they'll push and I'll be like, I can't, okay. And then I'll just walk and they'll talk. I'll be like, I can't hear you. This does not work.
in some
People
cases,
don't
that
believe
might
me.
be preferable.
Yeah, actually it is in a lot of cases.
Like if you don't like the other attending on duty.
House now thinks that this is Cushing's syndrome. Gunman agrees to let Evan Peters go for one last test.
And Evan Peters is like, just give me some popcorn. I want to stick around and see what happens.
I'm going to hang outside the door, but I will go a little. Despite agreeing to a deal, Gunman demands House give 13 the drugs first, which was, again, not what they decided. She says, whatever, I'll take the drugs, much to House's chagrin. She's essentially proving him right here, by the way.
Yes.
Saying, I just don't care. I'm getting it out of my hands here. She takes the dose, then Gunman takes his. He then talks about how shitty it was not knowing what's wrong with him, but 13 does know what's wrong with her. She has Huntington's.
You're so lucky you only have 8 to 10 years to live and know it.
And who knows what's wrong with
I
me?
might
It
be
could
fine.
be fixed easily,
Yeah.
yes. 13 then starts to have kidney failure, and House still can't figure what's up with Gunman. Gunman should have similar problems because he took the dose, but he's not. His kidneys are fine. House does some tests which involves slapping the shit out of Gunman.
I think he just liked to do that.
I mean, wouldn't we all? I'd like to do it to
Yes.
House, too. House learns something, kidneys, fine, calcium. I don't know. There was a revelation.
There's some kind of doctor stuff in there.
What?
If only we had a doctor. On
How
site.
dare you, sir?
What a besmirching.
House, what is left? What could this be? It's frustrating to everyone, House included. Dr. Cameron then suggests over the phone that melioidosis fits every symptom, but House says, look, if you'd read his history, you would have known he's never been anywhere tropical.
Is this like his go-to has this person been in a tropical climate?
I mean, that's a real doctor thing. They
I
ask
guess
it all the
that's
time
true.
because
that's where shit happens.
tsetse flies and all these
I
other
forget
things
that
happen.
people that aren't me travel.
Yeah, I just got a little deja vu because we talked about this recently, but this is there's a whole thing here where I wasn't sure either.
Mhm.
Does Florida count as tropical? I didn't know.
That's just it. After the guy says, look, I've never been anywhere south of Florida, to which House replies, you fucking idiot. Of course Florida counts. It's hot enough. It can harbor a lot of these bacteria.
Yeah, and there's monsters there and stuff.
There's Florida man everywhere.
Yeah, there's living
Lawn?
alligators and people with
Living
Confederate flag
alligators.
t-shirts.
Well, there's probably dead ones too. I'm not sure.
I don't
There's
know
alligator gar
what happens to an alligator when it dies.
gets eaten by those isopods.
Oh no, it goes to alligator heaven. That's where you're wrong.
All alligators go to heaven like the Disney movie, and all
I
alligators go to
wish.
heaven too.
And then their translucent ghost gator shadows roam the earth.
And they just sit there like,
And they also
And they don't
come
do
up with a
anything.
toilet.
That's terrifying. Like, and they're supposed to be benevolent spirits, and it's like, there's an alligator. He's translucent.
do you think that those birds that pick shit out of alligators' teeth, the ghost versions of them, do
Yes.
it out of the ghost alligators'
But not the
teeth?
real ones. They can't see them.
No, because the ghost alligator. We've established that
Yeah.
at this point. With one final test in line, an agreement is reached for 13 to administer the drugs while House is traded for them. One last trade. Presumably, we're to believe that as soon as 13 takes these things, she's just going to die. Because they've
Yeah.
been hinting, look, you cannot have this guy, all these medicines in
And
you
at this
once.
point, I just kept being like, how is no one like, you can't do this?
She's so brave. She's so brave.
13 and Gunman then have a discussion about death here in the final moments, as he says he has to take she has to take the medicine first, and he's not really upset at killing her because clearly she doesn't value her own life.
And she's the only one who has had everything he's had. That's his actual guinea pig. So he thinks, hey, this is the only way we can do this. We got to go out together.
What a terrible, like, selfish rationale, too, to be like, you currently are going through something and don't value your own life as much, which means
So
I deserve to be able to take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's horrible.
And as we get down to crunch time here, though, 13 realizes that maybe she doesn't actually want to die after all. This is her big moment. He's got the gun at her. She's got the needle to her arm. She can't bring herself to put it in and inject herself.
Heartwarming moment where he doesn't do it.
Not vein warming, though, thankfully. She doesn't put that needle in there.
And he doesn't make her.
No.
And at the last possible second, before the SWAT guys blow a hole in the wall for some reason, he injects himself with the medicine. Boom, the bomb goes off. The SWAT team comes in to take Gunman away.
Yes, the bomb goes off in House M.D.
Yeah, that's right. As the SWAT team leads Gunman away, House catches his eye. And for the final examination test,
Gives him the gun back again.
House pantomimes for the guy to take a deep breath, and the guy manages to do so, which confirms what House figured out in the end. We get some mopey acoustic music here and fade to a hospital bed with 13 resting peacefully and Foreman's at her side. He says after a week of temporary dialysis, she'll be fine, back to normal.
Yeah.
That's all. All this was totally fine.
She then says, about that Huntington's drug trial, which gives the impression that she really did change.
She's learned something.
She learned.
Yeah, she values her life. She wants to continue with it.
Mm-hmm. Now, the very final scene has Cuddy back in her office with House's scribbles on the wall, blood on the floor, everything in disarray.
Pentagrams everywhere.
It looks like a serial killer left some sort of, like, tableau crime scene.
It's certainly more messy and disarrayed than the guy's house.
Yeah.
that they had to go to her apartment.
Yeah, which he took great care to
I was
organize
impressed.
for everyone. Yeah,
Sure.
he's a good guy.
Gunman
Really
keeps a
respect him.
tidy shop.
House comes into the office and says, "Hey, I was right. It really was melioidosis." Cuddy's oblivious to the fact that that's all he cares about. They end up
Fair.
debating about who enabled whom and quasi-talk about having a relationship. But then after House leaves, Cuddy goes to get something out of her desk. When we find out exactly what it was House was doing then there in the very first place, the beginning of the episode.
Jerking it.
He was jerking it right at her desk. He fucked up
Over
her
Cuddy
drawer.
porn.
Van is
complain.
intimating
Whoa.
he'd be okay with that.
All right.
If she willingly did it. He fucked her drawer up. So when she pulls it out, everything just dumps on the floor.
Yeah,
and
he
he's-
fucked her drawer up.
he's
Oh
just being an
man.
asshole. So there we go. That's this wild and wacky episode of
It
House.
And
was.
it was.
It
I
was.
did not in any way
No.
think that House would turn into some sort of gun-toting hostage like cop type show for
Yeah.
any stretch of time. Even just one episode.
Did you guys like this one more or less than the first one?
For me, it was less.
That
It-
was hard. That's hard to answer. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this one felt a little more like off. It didn't feel like the show knew what it was exactly a lot of the time. In the first one, I was a little more willing to go along with its flights of fancy in a way because it was still telling a medically based story and that sort of things. Which is not to say that the show can't deviate at all. I just felt this one sort of was a bit of a, as they would say since Happy Days, a jump the shark situation in how nuts it was in ways that weren't just look at this rare diagnosis.
Mhm.
It was like, look at this rare violent circumstance where people are getting shot and there's an explosion at the end.
Yeah, so you thought maybe they were just trying to not be too formulaic, and you respect their effort. even
Not
if it didn't
really.
work?
No, I think it's like, I don't mind a show deviating. I felt like this was something that maybe happens later in a show's run when they're trying to just fill the episode order and they're like, let's do something bombastic. But I feel like there might be, and maybe this is just my preference as a viewer, but I'd rather see 13 decide she wants to live and not have to be brought about by a hostage situation. I don't know.
That's fair.
Every show has their hostage episode. You know, we
So
talk-
a lot of them do.
Don't you think you would reevaluate things after you were held hostage?
Well, every
And
time it
given-
happens, I think I'll change.
I don't go to hospitals enough, so I don't get held hostage. That's
Well,
weird.
you can't. You don't have the ability to without the incredible health insurance that is lacking for
That's true.
most of us. Bring your gun next time.
Oh, there was actually a great joke I glossed over early on. There was a pregnant woman with the hostage, and the hippie husband was like, "My wife's not feeling good." And House goes, "Next time, bring your gun. Maybe we'll get to you a little sooner."
Really?
Yeah, he's very not pleased with how the chain of command. He respects it. He knows he has no choice
Mhm.
but to cater to Gunman. But he is making fun of him a little bit there. I'd also like to point out that hippie husband you mentioned. I mean, that guy just straight up looks like a caveman.
Wide face.
Yeah.
I didn't think a face could be that wide.
Yeah,
It was, you could put,
it's a
Billboards.
distinct face though.
yeah, very distinct, very hippie-like. I agree. The first one was far better, quote unquote, in my opinion. I don't even think it's quote unquote. I think it was far better. The show House started doing exactly what you said, being more bombastic. They had more crazy problems. The woman stole a baby at one point in the hospital. And in fact, in that episode, as the hospital goes into lockdown, doctors Chase and Cameron had been married to that point. They had split up,
Oh,
and Chase was bitter about it. They got locked in a room together,
Oh no.
and they had to hash things out. She just left. She didn't explain any of them. He's mad because he's like, "You have to tell me what the problem was. You even love me in the first place." They fight and fight and fight. Then they fuck.
Well,
oh,
that's
okay.
what happens after
So it's
fights.
it's just drama. It's very soap opera at times, and that's what House is. I didn't necessarily like that more, but I still enjoyed the show as it went along.
Again, still like this episode is ridiculous,
Mhm.
but I had a good
was
enough time
enjoyable.
watching it.
Yeah.
This felt more enjoyable to me in the Walker, Texas Rangers sense.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, shit. Like I should be watching it with a peanut gallery.
This is not remotely plausible, but I can't remove myself from my seat.
Yeah, the writing is just too much geared toward that, and it does work in that sense. I want to ask you, Van, while we have a second here.
Let's open the floor. So if you guys have questions, shoot
Yeah.
them out.
Yeah, I enjoyed these. I felt like the whole thing here was the plot was hard to let go of. Whereas with Scrubs, I can't remember that many plots, but the characters.
Hold on. I'll do it for you. Here's the plot.
Okay.
Listen, Shirley, I'm a mean, angry doctor, and I'm only 10 and nothing else. I can't go to a 1 or 4. I'm an asshole.
The internet has
I'm
a whole
a janitor. Look at me being mean to Zach Braff. I'm Carla, and I'm just a total asshole to everyone. There you go. Summed up
Now,
the show.
you just said this. The characters were a little stereotypical, but House is a stereotype, like times 100, times a million. So my thought is, a lot of people ask this. If you Google Dr. Cox versus Dr. House, there's a lot going on there.
Okay.
And I guess Scrubs started before House a little bit, not by a ton, but a little bit. So a lot of people are questioning, is House based on Dr. Cox? Like, is that what's happening there? But there's a lot of opinions on this. There's a lot of opinions that say Dr. Cox actually cares about his patients. House doesn't. He's just an asshole. He's an expert. He's smart, but he doesn't really care about people. Dr. Cox does. He uses sarcasm as a front. So there's a whole thing there that goes into that process. And it is widely searched on the internet. I did my research. It's a thing.
The commonality was not lost on me.
It's pretty clear.
Yeah. It just in terms of like the attitude of like, I don't know, like a bad boy doctor, but they're both 47.
Yeah.
Hey, they're bad boys. You can be bad boy at
Dr.
47.
Cox from Scrubs also is just absurdly muscular, which is just a strange
thing. It's been a while
thing.
since I've seen it, so I don't really remember him that
well.
well.
I saw an episode not that long ago while waiting. Well, I guess it's probably been like a couple of years now. But while waiting on a sandwich to be given to me at a restaurant,
and you thought, man, Dr. Cox is buff.
Were you at the Scrubs restaurant?
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
why did they have it on?
It's a Scrubs themed restaurant.
I
JD works there.
Yeah, your food is served on a giant stethoscope.
The only character I liked in that show, by the way, was the old doctor.
Kelso.
I liked him because he was just weird.
Why didn't you like Scrubs and you do like House?
It's Zach Braff primarily.
Okay.
It's very much that, again, it's what I said about Jake from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Zach Braff created it. He was the producer or whatever. It was his show, and he made his character infallible. When he made mistakes, quote unquote, everyone forgave him immediately. The blonde doctor, Becky from Roseanne.
Elliot in the show.
She was fawning over him at every given moment. They would sleep together. She would be like, "You're an asshole. You don't think about anyone but yourself." He would then go be an asshole, think only about himself, and then she'd be like, "You're so dreamy." And that's Zach Braff. He does that in every role, every movie he produces. Garden State, is that
yeah.
It's the same thing. He cheats on his wife, but to make it up to her, he sits on the porch for a while.
That's a different movie.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember the name of it.
Garden State was the one, with
else.
Hillary Portman.
But I have seen the movie you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Whatever. That's that one. I don't remember a whole lot
Last Kiss,
about.
maybe.
Yeah, that's it.
I didn't see that one.
Garden State was Natalie Portman was like the trendy girl.
It's an indie thing. Yeah, there's a lot of.
I still didn't like it.
There's the
They're
Shin
sitting
song.
around.
There always is
being quirky. They play in a garbage dump or something.
Is he in the Shins?
No,
I mean,
God,
maybe.
no. That's a real band.
That would be really funny.
That's what made the Shins popular. Is that one of their songs being in Garden State?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's certainly they're different mediums. House is a drama with comedy.
Right.
Scrubs is a comedy. I didn't find Scrubs all that funny, and I don't know if that's because it wasn't funny or because the Zach Braff character just turned me off so much. But at least with House, even though it's mailed in at times or they exposition you to death, it's somewhat smarter, if that makes sense. So I find it more interesting from that standpoint, whereas I feel like they just dumb Scrubs down to do whatever Zach Braff wanted to do.
Right, and it could just be that Scrubs was going for the sitcom approach and it didn't land for you, and House was going for the drama approach and it did work for you in that sense. That could be all it is. We don't have to involve Zach Braff. I know you want to.
We'll get him on the podcast.
You're usually in the middle ground. What do you think about Scrubs versus House?
I would definitely need to revisit Scrubs in reality for the first time in like 15 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time since anyone's watched Scrubs.
Yeah, I suspect what I would find would be tainted by some level of nostalgia. And I don't know if I'd be able to like accurately describe quality versus quality. I think they both actually exist on a more similar plane than it looks like in the surface, because neither one explicitly wants to be a drama or comedy.
Right. They're in that middle ground.
Yeah, they both have their interests. So it's just sort of like, what flavor of watchable hospital show do you want? Do you want the hour long that airs more on the side of drama, or the half hour that airs more on the side of comedy? And both of them certainly have their problems.
Yeah.
Well, the gimmicky things in Scrubs 2 were a little annoying to me. There's one that comes to mind. It's the Minute Work Band. The one that did, I come from a land down
Yeah,
yeah.
Colin Hay keeps showing back
where
up.
he's playing guitar in the background and singing, and it's interspersed
At
with.
one point, I
like,
think
he's
he
supposed to
dies
be there.
too in that episode.
Or
Yeah,
they
it's a
shock
weird
him
one.
back or
There's a
something.
lot of surreal stuff in that.
One of the
They're very silly.
Scrubs things that, because I like the silliness of Scrubs.
And that's the predominant.
The
theme
one
of that
part of it
show.
I don't like is the slapstick silliness
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
person who's not really into physical comedy.
That's fair.
much.
That's fair. And House has that own thing. House has its own thing that it does, and the drama side of that, where it might go to a little too
Yes.
heavy on a thing.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's just it's what it's going for.
It's
and,
all
yeah.
counterbalancing.
They are different shows. I think there's quite a few different theories on which one is more medically accurate.
Mm.
Is what's interesting.
We'll
me.
have to cover this eventually when we do Scrubs,
Well,
which
you know,
we're
we
going to
just-
end up doing. I mean,
we're-
there's no way we don't.
We've got a couple doctors here. We just need the third one, so we'll get there, and we'll eventually figure out who is the best doctor of all these shows.
Any other house questions before I pass it off to you, Spencer?
I do have one more, actually.
Okay, let's hear it.
Have you seen ER with George Clooney?
I actually have never watched ER.
Ah, man. Have you?
As a child, I saw
Do
one
you,
ER episode.
You're not going to be much of an expert, but do you
No.
think he was a better doctor than House?
Hmm.
Oh, no, probably not.
House
Well,
is the best.
We're going to have to...
I'm guessing House does not ever actually make a mistake.
He does, but it's minor.
Yeah.
When he makes a mistake, here's what happens. He's like, let's do this unnecessary test. And then everyone else is like, why would we do this unnecessary test? That's stupid. They do the test. House is wrong for the reason of doing the test, but they find something.
In the process
And
of
that
it. Yeah,
leads.
so he's tangentially correct.
Correct. Yes.
I have another question.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Okay, and this is concerning House as... Do you know anything about how the series ends? We've talked about this a lot on that.
You know, I've read a little bit, but not a whole
Does
lot.
House find any level of personal happiness?
Surely
No.
not.
No, he never does.
No, that would be odd. Does he fix his drug addiction?
We go back and forth. Sometimes he does. Here's
That's
the problem.
accurate.
Here's the problem. We call it a drug addiction, and it is, but here's where I'll push back against the show. House has issues. He has severe pain.
Yeah.
every
Which they
moment.
yeah.
push in the episode about his leg. It's like, of course he needs painkillers.
It's medicine.
There's a level of it that would be probably necessary.
He chose not to take his leg, and yeah, he's gonna need painkillers forever.
Exactly. Now,
Just-
he does take too much and get a
Sure.
little crazy with
But
it.
wouldn't you?
Yeah,
I mean-
absolutely. So there, in fact, when he goes to the psychiatric hospital, he gets off the drugs. Oh, the story I was going to finish earlier. So he goes to that hospital, meets the psychiatrist who's played by the guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine before I went on my diatribe. And that guy helps him work through stuff, and they realize, like, you don't need to be at that hospital. What's enabling what's causing your problems is you're addicted to finding the answer, blah, 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 blah. Well, what he learns over the course of several episodes, and he's not on painkillers this whole time, he's trying to find something, and he finds out he's getting too into whatever he does. He starts taking cooking classes with his roommate,
Oh, that's
Dr. Wilson, at this
fascinating.
time, and he can't stop. He has to make the perfect dish. He's constantly cooking. He never sleeps.
I want to watch that right now.
It's actually quite good. It's one I watched the other day. But eventually he goes back to the psychiatrist. He still visits him periodically, and he's helps somebody solve Dr. Foreman, I think. Oh, Foreman takes over the department at the hospital. Foreman is the new House, and he's struggling. House secretly helps Foreman figure it out.
yeah.
Oh,
And he
man.
tells the psychiatrist, he's like, you know, I hopped off the wagon or on the wagon, whatever the expression is. And the guy's like, you took drugs? And he goes, no, I solved the case. And the guy eventually is like, well, maybe we were wrong. Maybe you do need the hospital. So that's when House goes back to work there
Oh,
and he
I
assembles
see.
his crew. But
I'm surprised
so he
the
goes on and
psychiatrist
off.
didn't say, maybe you should find other ways to also make your life fulfilling other than work.
Yeah,
Well,
take some more pills.
He also does this thing later on, I think this is like season 7, where there's this experimental drug or procedure, fixes his leg, and 2 days later he's running, he's jogging, he's fit
And
healthy.
is that the rest of the show?
No,
He's-
once he stops taking the drug, it reverts.
Oh,
It was
okay.
real. That's when
That's
House gets
interesting.
super dumb, but it was still fascinating to
Yeah,
watch. It was a
no,
train
I'd
wreck
watch
at
it.
that
I
point.
get sucked in for sure.
So he doesn't necessarily find happiness, and in fact, the finale is titled "Everybody Dies." I think they're at House's funeral,
Which
but I'm
is
not
true.
Sure. Yeah, everybody does die. At the end of season 7, Fox wanted to cut budget, so they said Lisa Edelstein, Cuddy, Dr. Cameron, and Dr. Chase and Dr. Foreman. They looked at those 3 or 4, maybe not Cameron. Cameron was gone at this point. Anyway, they looked at them and said, "We have to cut budget. Will any of you take a pay cut?" Omar Epps and the Australian guy took the pay cut.
Wow.
Lisa Edelstein did not. So she
I don't
did. She
blame
was
her.
not in the final season with of House.
That's
and
gonna
they
piss
just write her
SAG off or whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, it was it didn't end great from what I know, but up through season 7, I think season 7, House goes crazy and drives a car through Cuddy's house.
Oh no!
Like a total Billy Joel.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's not the first time we've referenced Billy Joel. I don't feel like anyway.
Well, on that
Well,
note,
hey, look, I didn't start the fire.
on that note, let's stop talking House and instead discuss what we're going to be doing next.
Would you guys agree that the ones I picked so far have been a little different? They've
I'd
been
say
a little
that.
different. They've
Yeah,
been,
yeah.
Well, you have what? Well, let's walk through them. We have Columbo,
And,
which was a 70s detective show, which
Yes.
was amazing.
and they were movie length.
They were very, very long.
They were long as hell.
What was
And
next?
21
21
Jump
Jump
21
Street.
Jump Street.
A police drama
Which-
that
oh.
turned out to be about PSAs. When
Yeah.
I didn't know.
So the commonality here, cops and Johnny Depp.
Drama, deep topics,
It's
long.
it's changed our format quite a bit from what
Marino
we've been doing the
Brothers
rest
wine.
of the time. Like we've been trying to cover for me, honestly. Like I'm picking these things where it's like, how do we put this in a comedy podcast?
I'm going to be fair, though. I was going to do House anyway. So this was not a decision of what could I do that would gel with our series of episodes. This was, it's time to do House. I'm excited to do House.
House was dramatic in a way we can laugh about, though.
Sure.
So
It
didn't-
wasn't awful.
I think so
like
far
No.
we
21
have.
Jump Street.
You're not going to have to put a disclaimer in any of
No.
those
I
ones.
will say
Like,
we've not
please do
found
not-
anything we can't laugh at yet, though.
Please do not bring a gun to the hospital. I understand you might want to, but don't do it. So I actually looked really hard for this one, and I'm really proud of it. It's going to be super fun. It's actually on a couple of platforms. You
Ooh.
do have to have paid platform subscriptions to these. It's on HBO Max and the first 4 seasons, which we're only going to cover the first season.
It's Dexter,
So
isn't
it's
it?
on it's on Hulu as well. So you can get it on Hulu and HBO Max. It is an animated show. It originated on Cartoon Network.
All right.
They
Two
are
stupid dogs. Cow
They're-
and chicken.
they are 10-minute
Oh, wow.
episodes. So we're going to
Okay.
do 2 for each of our shows.
Is this where they'll do
Okay.
2 for a half-hour show?
Yeah, well,
Is this Adventure Time?
no, but it's
Okay,
close.
okay.
We're gonna do 2 10-minute episodes for each of the ones we
Sure.
the ones we host. So it originated in 2013. It's called Steven Universe, and that's Steven with a V.
I have memes. I have not watched this. I've heard really good things about it.
Are you
There are-
serious? I thought this was gonna be
Yeah,
out
there
of the blue.
are
What?
people
Do you
I
know
know.
about it?
Yeah,
Oh God. Okay. This
I can
is,
see the art style right in
I
my
was
head.
Yeah.
really thinking this was gonna throw you guys. You're like, oh no, I know all about that.
Wait,
show.
is this the one with the little round guy with the
Yes.
curly hair?
Yes. yes.
Okay, yeah. And they're
God
like
damn it.
robots or something?
We'll get into that.
Okay.
some coworkers of mine recently were very into this show.
I've heard a lot of adults and smart people be like, no, this show's great.
Yeah, as
Okay.
have I. It's
Well,
supposed
that's
to be
good.
supposed to be awesome.
That's good because we're gonna find out, aren't we? So I've got 4 episodes picked out. Again, we're gonna do the first 2 on the first podcast, the second 2 on the next. I will read these aloud so that you guys can have it and that the listeners can be prepared for it. These are all season 1s. So again, you can find them on Hulu and HBO Max. Steven Universe. Episode 2, which is Laser Light Cannon,
Of course it is.
and then episode 25, Mirror Gem. Those are both 10 minutes, and we'll be discussing those together on the first episode. So we'll come back later in the week, and we will do episode 26, Ocean Gem. The very next episode after Mirror Gem. The plot kind of works
Lots
together.
of
there.
gems.
Yeah, it works together. And then we'll take a little bit, we'll dive deeper into the series, go to episode 49. This is all one season.
Some of those shows do that. Like
Yeah.
Pokemon, the original cartoon,
I guess
had
if it's
like
short
3
enough,
seasons.
you can.
Yeah.
So this is episode 49, Jailbreak, and that's how we'll conclude it. So it's episode 2, Laser Light Cannon, episode 25, Mirror Gem in the first one, and then later in the week we'll be doing Ocean Gem, episode 26, and episode 49, Jailbreak.
And
So
this is big. It's our first animated show. Also,
It's
our
gonna be a
shortest show.
huge-
Also, our newest show.
huge thing. Yeah, I don't think there's any way we could do an hour on a 10-minute episode, so I wanted to combine
Yeah,
them. So we'll see what happens here. This is going to be
probably go 2
fascinating.
hours somehow.
You never know. I think you guys will enjoy this, and it's going to be fascinating to look into what the meaning was. Apparently, everyone likes it. I didn't know this.
Yeah, it's a well-regarded show. I
Good
do
deal.
know that.
So there you go. Let's go ahead and share our Twitter handles and so forth and get out of here. I am on Twitter at ManlyVanLee. Brian is at Loud Guitar Brian. Spencer is at the number 3 French_hen. We have the show podcast account, Twitter account at Bootu Boys. We have a webpage, BoopTubeBoys.com, where we'll have articles, all kinds of stuff on there. Link to the Patreon, which again, if you like what we do, subscribe to patreon.com/BooTuInc. Just a couple bucks a month will get you access to all sorts of bonus shows. We do weekly content. Might have extra stuff periodically.
Might be talking about medical maladies.
Yes, and you'll get a preview of what we do in the coming weeks. I am Van Lee. Thank you once again to Spencer and Brian, and we'll catch you next time on the BoopTube Boys.
Oh, you guys, I figured it out. I think the gunman has the flu.
Yeah. I thought so, but I didn't want to say it.